how does a modern take on such a classic, culturally foundational piece of literature miss the mark so wildly? If you've been wondering how a beloved, chilling story devolves into just a forgettable blur, well, you're in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly where this adaptation went off the rails. We're talking stylistic choices, frantic pacing, and the core philosophy of the production. It's basically a masterclass in how a story loses its soul. Animal Farm is widely considered to be one of those stories that is almost impossible to mess up. George Orwell's writing is stark, it's brutally honest, and the allegorical structure is literally built like a tank. It survived decades of analysis for a reason. Its message is crystal clear. So how exactly does a studio mishandle something so established? Well, that brings us to our first major issue: failing in iconic allegory. To understand the root of the movie's problems, we've got to look at its relationship with the original book. The big overarching critique here is that the film seems fundamentally terrified of its own source material. There's this massive tug of war happening. On one side, you have Orwell's grim intent, a disturbing, paranoid, and intensely oppressive story about hope literally rotting into a dictatorship. You know, the animals overthrow their oppressor, only to agonize as their own revolutionary leaders become the exact same tyrants. That slow, sickening realization is the entire point. But then, on the other side, you have the movie's execution. It's completely sanitized, it feels corporate, polished, and just overwhelmingly safe. It's like every single sharp edge of this blistering political allegory got methodically sanded down in some boardroom meeting just to make absolutely sure nobody got upset. And this leads to a very specific, biting frustration. The filmmakers seemed way more interested in selling plush toys than actually making the audience uncomfortable. I mean, let's just pause and think about that for a second. We're talking about an allegory detailing the psychological rise of totalitarianism being leveraged for cuddly merchandising. It's a staggering disconnect. When a studio prioritizes audience comfort and mass marketability, and toy sales, of course, over the challenging truths the original author was trying to convey, you're not just changing the flavor of the story, you are entirely defeating its purpose. You're silencing the exact warning it was built to deliver. Which leads right into part 2, glossing over gritty reality. Let's do a bit of a visual autopsy here, because the presentation of the film completely backfires. The animation itself is objectively beautiful. You've got nice fur rendering on the animals, pristine lighting, lush environments, but those are the exact qualities ruining the tone. The animals look way too clean, highly marketable, like they just stepped out of a shampoo commercial. But remember the setting. Animal Farm is a failing, exploitative agricultural operation. It's run by desperate creatures surviving on meager rations. It's supposed to feel dirty. It should be freezing cold, muddy, and deeply oppressive. By giving this adaptation a weird, glossy family film vibe, they completely destroy the necessary atmosphere. The gorgeous visuals are literally fighting against the grim narrative. Okay, moving on to the third issue, Marvel jokes and rushed pacing. So, if the visuals are fighting the narrative, the tone of the script is at absolute war with it. The story inherently requires sincere, physically threatening scenes to convey the sheer danger of this rising regime. You need to feel the genuine peril these animals are in. Instead, the movie undercuts all its own built-up tension with constant Marvel-style quips and goofy, exaggerated expressions. And even worse, characters who are supposed to be desperate revolutionaries, trapped in a collapsing society, mind you, they're reduced to acting like wacky side characters. Honestly, it feels like their dialogue was perfectly optimized to be chopped up into out-of-context TikTok clips rather than serving any kind of dramatic weight. Injecting this modern, irony-soaked dialogue just totally kills the sincerity of the situation. And beyond the tone, there's a massive structural issue with the pacing. It's like the movie is absolutely terrified to let a scene breathe. Just picture watching a pivotal sequence unfold. The scene starts, and within 20 seconds, a major, heartbreaking betrayal occurs. By 40 seconds, a significant turning point hits the plot, but because it was rushed so frantically, there's absolute zero emotional weight. You barely even have time to process what happened. And by the 60-second mark, yep, the movie is already rushing off to the next goofy, clip-friendly joke. The filmmakers are sprinting through complex, deeply psychological turning points at breakneck speed. It's like they're terrified that if they hold our attention on anything serious for more than a minute, we're going to get bored. So the crucial takeaway is this. When a movie moves this incredibly fast just to avoid sitting in discomfort, it completely sacrifices its characters. Take Boxer, the loyal, hardworking draft horse. Boxer is the absolute heart of this story. He represents the well-meaning working class who are ultimately exploited and discarded by the very regime they broke their backs to build. His character arc is meant to completely destroy the audience emotionally. It's the defining tragedy of the allegory. But because the film refuses to slow down and let his quiet, dedicated moments breathe, Boxer barely gets enough depth for his big, tragic moments to land. The emotional core of the whole story is robbed of its narrative weight, leaving you feeling absolutely nothing when you should be devastated. Which brings us to the fourth and final section: content instead of meaningful art. This actually opens up a much broader philosophical debate about modern media consumption. There is a very distinct separation to be made here between content and art. Content, especially in the modern streaming era, is often this safe, polished fodder. It's designed explicitly to be consumed passively and, most importantly, not to offend anyone. It's the stuff that plays in the background while you scroll on your phone. Art, on the other hand, is a meaningful, impactful creation. It has a soul. It challenges you. It might make you angry. It might make you deeply uncomfortable, but it actually has something to say. And the tragic conclusion is that the filmmakers looked at one of the most important pieces of literature of the 20th century and just settled. They settled for producing easily digestible content, completely abandoning the daring, provocative nature required to make meaningful art. So what's the true cost of playing it safe? Well, when you strip away the danger, the movie is left just vaguely gesturing toward the powerful ideas of the original book without actually having the courage to say anything about them. It wears the skin of Animal Farm, sure, but by removing all the sharp edges to avoid offending a modern general audience, it loses absolutely everything meaningful in the process. The whole viewing experience becomes completely hollow. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. When we continuously sand down the edges of our sharpest, most crucial stories, are we really left with anything worth watching? It's a question that goes way beyond just this one animated movie. It asks us to look at our entire media landscape and consider the true cost of prioritizing safe, highly marketable content over challenging, thought-provoking art. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep questioning the media you consume, and I'll catch you next time as we dive into another fascinating topic.